Okay, so vague spoilers for Thunderbolts, the new Marvel movie. People may be aware, have heard people talk about how movies reflect the concerns of their time. And a good way to see this is comic book movies are actually a good way to see this because you can see a character and you can see how the character is approached, the same character, over different decades. Like even the Batman, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies that weren't made over a large span of time, but they reflect the concerns of that time. Like at one point, the concern is terrorism. At another point, the concern is the surveillance state. And you can do the same thing when you see how movies are remade. I've heard people talk about, for example, the Manchurian Candidate, how the original Manchurian Candidate dealt with the threat of the Cold War, the enemy of the Soviet Union and China to, I guess, a lesser extent. But then the remake with Denzel Washington dealt more with like the control of corporations and whatnot, right? Well, I don't think the Marvel movies, they kind of reflect this. And I think the irony is that the Thunderbolts movie, whether they intend to do this, I think a lot of times when writers and directors do this, I don't know if they consciously do it. So here's the kind of the very vague spoiler, and you don't have to turn off the video because it's, kind of vague spoilers with this, is that there really isn't on the surface, yeah, like every other movie, there is an enemy, and the heroes have to defeat an enemy. But the irony is that and I've been thinking about this, I watched the movie yesterday, and I just keep thinking about it, because at first, I think my opinion of the movie is slowly increasing, and it's gotten good Rotten Tomatoes scores, because it's worth watching. But the enemy really isn't a character, as if you watch the movie, you think it's like, here's the bad guy, they have to defeat him. The actual enemy is their trauma and their isolation. And there's a character that kind of actually does a physical manifestation of his personal trauma, but a personal manifestation. And that trauma is actually the threat to the world. So they actually have to defeat they have to deal with their own personal trauma. They have to cure their own isolation, but they actually have to help the antagonist with his trauma and his isolation. So they're really, oddly enough, they are dealing with a character that is, as they say in the movie, more powerful than arguably any of the other Avengers in the past. But for that reason, it's a much more grounded story. We can all relate to sometimes feeling hopeless and alone, much more than we can relate to the fear of an alien or interdimensional threat invading our planet, at least for most people.